Okay, we have Henrietta Stern from Fort Friends. She was totally instrumental in getting the Fort Ord National Monument. I'm sure you saw her picture in the paper with Barack Obama. So welcome, Henrietta.
Isn't it wonderful just being here in all these different groups that are so involved with Fort Ord in different ways? I'm going to be talking a little bit about Fort Friends, which I think is one of the earlier groups. It's a little more moderate, not as political as some of the other groups because we're focusing on our 501c3 nonprofit status. We've been recognized as a state nonprofit organization and have gotten some letters from the IRS. They need a few more bits of information, and thank you, Eric, for helping with that. And hopefully we'll be receiving our 501c3 nonprofit status really soon, which will, I think, enable us to do some really positive things. We really are an outgrowth of what was called the Fora Trail Working Group. And that basically came about when Fora announced several years ago that because of the cleanup that was planned, they were going to close all of the happy trails that Bill mentioned. And thank you, Bill, for doing those nice maps. That's so helpful. And so many different users, people I never knew were out there. I'm a mountain biker, you know, hikers, equestrians, dog walkers, dog trainers, photographers, runners. Everyone was just really angry and showed up at a Fora meeting. I have a newspaper clipping from the Coast Weekly back on the table near me that highlighted this. And, you know, what are we going to do about this? You can't just close things off for 7 years. How are we going to get to the BLM lands? And that evolved into the monthly meeting with the Fora folks, advising the trail users what's going on. We work to get an access point for those who come from the Schoonover area past Inner Garrison onto what's called the Jerry Smith Corridor. We work with Fora to create that, also the 8th and Giggling area. So that really was our genesis of wanting that access. And basically what binds us together, very different types of users, sometimes actually user groups that sometimes conflict with each other. We're all united by our passion for these trails and the long-term access for these trails. Next slide, please. Our mission is basically to preserve and expand the public access to Fort Ord trails in light of the Fort Ord Base Reuse Plan, and then of course in this time frame as revised, and we certainly hope it will be revised to reflect the current realities, as well as the habitat protection requirements. Some of you are aware of this Habitat Conservation Plan and Habitat Management Plan. We want to work, we're really, I think, more of a work within the system kind of group as much as possible. We try to work with the agencies and the various landowners, meaning the cities and county, to try to create an integrated Fort Ord Trails Plan. We'd love to see the city of Marina and Seaside and the county and others work together to create something really beautiful that integrates bicycle commuting, road bike trails, mountain bike trails, and now with the National Monument, visitor centers, integrating that with bus service so people don't have to drive their cars to go for a bike rider out there. They can hop on the bus and go out there and be more lower carbon footprint and that type of thing. So, you know, we really try to think in terms of positive win-win and creative ideas. How can we work together to solve some of these issues and things that hopefully everyone across the spectrum can feel good about? We really envision this trails plan as having Fort Ord as a hub of a regional recreation area and also bike commuting so people can bike all over to and from their homes and jobs throughout the peninsula with Fort Ord as the hub. And also, of course, to support the sustainable economic development that benefits the local businesses, the residents, and the environment. Some of the original trail users working group types of users are bicyclists, mountain bikers, as well as road cyclists, hikers, walkers, and joggers, equestrians of several different stripes, and also competitive runners. We have a famous Olympic athlete and her coach, who's one of our board members, Bob Seveni's in the room, who uses that trails. He also mentioned that people from other countries and other areas of the country run on the Fort Ord trails to train for their Olympic dreams in the marathon and other distance events. Also, our CSUMB cross-country team trains out there. So there's competitive events both in running as well as cycling CCCX with Keith DeFibra hosts hundreds of cyclists throughout the year in cyclocross and cross country. We have search and rescue dog training. Several groups use the trails for that purpose. We have folks who wish to have a youth camp, an environmental education center to help future generations honor the trails and the environment. And we also have wonderful members who are very esteemed botanists, part of the Native Plant Society, scientists from CSUMB and others, and just people who love to be out on the trails and enjoy them for their photographic and natural beauty out there. Also, one of the original members was a geocaching group, teaching people how to use their GPS to locate interesting little treats along the trails. Fort Friends really serves more as an umbrella group, trying to consolidate and unify and establish communication between all the other different types of user groups. And some of the examples here are founding group members are the BETA, the Bicycle Equestrian Trails Assistance Group. These are first responder type folks who are out there with maps, radios, medical type training or first responder training. Central Coast Cycling I mentioned, that's the competitive mountain biking and road riding. Monterey Bay Youth Camp, Monterey County Search and Rescue Dogs, Monterey Off-Road Cycling Association, of which I'm also a member. It's a mountain bike group. Marina Equestrian Association and Center, an equestrian group. And also there's several other equestrian groups who use the trails too. California Native Plant Society and our wonderful BLM volunteers from that group. Wednesday night laundry runners who are very active in the community. Some of the Big Sur international marathon events, the mud run and those types of things are out there on the trails. CSUMB Cross Country and many others are joining. In terms of the shared values, we have a passion for the Fort Ord Trails and the public access to them. We really are into trying to create win-win solutions to issues, problems, and conflicts. A real important one that hasn't really been touched on this evening is mutual respect among the trail user groups themselves. Sometimes you may hear of some tension, maybe between horseback riders and mountain bike riders or whatever. And what's been especially nice in this group is getting to know my equestrian friends, learning more about horses themselves, the needs of horses, how we can work together to minimize conflicts, how we can design trails, all sorts of really positive things. And especially as with the National Monument and more people coming to these trails, how are we going to be sure that everyone can get along, feel safe, and enjoy their experience? So that's another part of our mission, is to communicate with each other, foster mutual respect, being a good neighbor with each other, as well as the next bullet in respecting the environment, respecting the animals, the plants, the wildlife, just that we're so lucky to have it, to not abuse that in any way, that type of thing. So will be, I think, more and more important as more and more people enjoy these trails and learn about them. Mentioned before was fostering sustainable communities and ecotourism, and basically just having a long-term vision for future generations that these trails will be available to our children, grandchildren, and beyond, that they'll be not eroded and denuded, that they'll be in pretty much the shape they are now. And that takes work, that takes volunteer efforts, trail maintenance, people working together, cleaning up trash, lots of different things that we've been involved with. So it's to really keep it as something magical and special that our future generations, our legacy basically, is what that's all about. One thing that's important is this concept of united we stand, divided we fall. Again, that goes to that issue of the trail users all love the trails, whether you're on a horse, whether you're on foot, whether you're on a bike, and how do we work together? And because if we can't solve our own problems, someone else will do it for us. And that often is, a government agency or some sort, and we think that's best done ourselves. So we are very into working together on that. In terms of some of our current priorities, we celebrate the creation of the Fort Ord National Monument. We worked along with so many other groups. I'm smiling at Bill here because he's certainly one. Worked so hard on that. Someone who hasn't been recognized, who just happens to be standing up right there, is Gordon Smith. of the veterans of foreign wars. He and I went to Washington twice, February and March, and he was very instrumental in this, especially from the veterans and the military, honoring the military legacy. Originally we thought it might be called the Fort Ord Soldiers National Monument. It's not called that, but certainly honoring the military legacy is a big part of that, and Gordon was very emphatic and spoke so well with the various elected officials regarding that. So thank you, Gordon. We are very involved with attending the various fora, county and other agency meetings, participating in his whatever venues are available to do that. Something, the last bullet here hasn't been mentioned. It's somewhat on hold, but there was a draft effort regarding this Fort Ord Recreation Habitat Area Master Plan. That is on hold. We're not really sure where it's going. There are questions of how up to date is it, given some of the changes. But one thing that it did do that was helpful is we talk about happy trails, but besides Bill maybe mapping some trails, they've never really been mapped. They don't have numbers, and if you're not a local, you're probably going to get lost if you start meandering around on those trails. So one thing in terms of that integrated, comprehensive trail network, 1 minute, I'm almost done. We'd really like to help see the Fort Ord BLM lands and the Happy Trails lands have some sort of integrated trail system, and maybe even suggested loops for people if you're a beginner, if you're intermediate, if you're more advanced, how to get around and how do they link up together, because right now that's not really out there. I know Darius Reich, president of MORCA, is in the audience, and that's something that MORCA really is working on too. I think I already mentioned the National Monument effort, just that we had the opportunity to, we were one of the groups inviting Secretary Salazar to come. We got to go to Washington. We, as well as so many of you in this room, wrote a lot of letters and encouraged the president to sign the proclamation, and are very glad he did. In terms of our longer-term goals, we really want to see the Fort Ord National Monument be successful. One thing that hasn't been mentioned, and I forgot to put it on my slide, is there's a required management plan for the National Monument. We want to be very involved with that. We hope through our 501c3 status that obtaining some grants, perhaps do some special projects like signage or whatever, honoring the military legacy, some of this trail signage type of things, and other types of grants that might help the National Monument and help local and visiting users enjoy those trails. Of course, the comprehensive Fort Ord Trails Plan is something we'd like to see, support of projects that are consistent with the National Monument, as well as that future trails plans, and encourage sustainable communities and ecotourism opportunities.